Hey guys, Angus here and welcome to the video. And today's video we're going to use a whiteboard and we're going to run through the pyramid, the low intensity pyramid that endurance cyclists use. And we're also going to cover a minimum effective dose and maximum recoverable volume and how much you should train. So the minimum effective dose is the minimum amount of work you need to do to elicit a response in your body to create some sort of adaptation and change. And the maximum recoverable volume is the most amount of exercise you can do that will be beneficial for you. And if you go over that, you start dipping into fatigue and you don't recover, hence the name maximum recoverable volume, you don't recover. So in weightlifting and endurance sports and all these things, people look at like the total mileage and go, oh, you're not recovering from X amount of miles per week, or you're not recovering from X amount of sets per week. And if you're doing training, which is strength training, high intensity training, and low intensity training, that's a lot of stuff to have a look at. So just because you recover from 30 sets a week of weight training, but then once you start including running, that's going to take a bit of a nosedive. And I've got a simple way of working this all out using our most important recovery agent, our supplement that we can take to boost recovery. And no one's really looking at it at this end. Well, obviously there are people looking at it at this end, but let me put it all together, and that is sleep. So let me draw up the pyramid and then we'll get back to it. Okay guys, here's the pyramid. Hopefully you can see this. My growly handwriting. This says 20% and this says 80%, and it's just a pyramid with a little line here. In endurance sports, it's really well known that this 80-20 model works. You should do, if you're say a cyclist, let's just pick a cyclist. If you're a cyclist, you should do 80% of your training volume at a low intensity and then 20% at high intensity. But that doesn't explain how much of either we should do. So we add in one other element to make this super simple, and it is another base to the pyramid. So the low intensity is the base of the pyramid in exercise, and the wider your base, the higher the peak. That's a Rich Roll quote. He's a fairly famous endurance athlete. I would add in this new base, and this new base is sleep. And if we go like this, sleep is literally the bed of your endurance. How many hours sleep will dictate how much work you can do. That's fairly logical and it makes sense. And I'm gonna write up I'm gonna show you the formula that I use to work this out. So if you're an iPhone user, you can go into the health app and it will tell you how many hours you sleep for. Not how many hours you're in bed for, but actually how many hours you're asleep for. And loads of people get this wrong. I had a client this week who told me she gets 8 hours sleep. When we had a look at her phone, it's 5.5 hours. And I'll show you how that translates. But I'll use 7.5 hours because that's what I get. So if I put 7.5, because that's what 7.5 hours is, and then all we're gonna do is translate that into minutes. So what we do is we take the 7.5 and we multiply that by 60 because there's 60 minutes in an hour. I've done that on my fancy watch because we're not doing maths today. That's 450 minutes. Now we're gonna use this 80-20 rule on this. So we're gonna take 20% of this. So all you do is multiply by 0.2 to give us our answer. Let's quickly do that. So multiply by 0.2 gives us 90. So this person that gets 7.5 hours sleep can do 90 minutes of low intensity. And again, if we multiply that by 0.2, we get 18 minutes. But we end there. We get 18 minutes of high intensity work. And this is per day, but of course this kind of accumulates over time because not everyone trains every single day. You want to give yourself a day off, etc., etc. But this is your maximum recoverable volume. And I'm going to split this into different sections just now. So 90 minutes of low intensity. Now, if you've done my test, you'll discover whether you're high up on the test or low down on the test. If you're low down on the test, then this 90-minute also includes your steps. And there's a really easy formula to find out how many steps this is. And it's basically just 90 becomes 9K. If you got 775, for instance, it would just be 7.5, which would be 7.5K steps. Basically, you get about 2,000 steps per 20 minutes, and you can just do all the complicated maths, or you can just quickly go 9K steps. So if this person has a low kind of aerobic engine, then walking will be low intensity for them. And the maximum amount of steps they should get in a day is 9K. And that's for 7.5 hours. Now, if this person gets a good score on my aerobic test, then this 90-minute won't really be their steps. I would expect them to do some low intensity on top of that. So kind of squiggle a line in the middle. That would be your steps. And then we're maybe looking for 30 minutes of kind of steady state cardio at a slightly higher heart rate. Now, high intensity, you can split high intensity however you want. What's really become popular now is to do some weight training, which anything that uses carbohydrates, I would consider as high intensity. So 18 minutes doesn't sound like a lot. You're like, yo bro, I spent an hour in the gym, but are you spending an hour solid training? Is it set to set to set to set? No, generally, even if you do, say, a set of 10, that set of 10 it can take you 10 seconds, but let's just give it benefit of doubt, it takes you 30 seconds. So 18 minutes would actually be, you times that by 2, and that will kind of give you your set, but not really, because you've got the recovery time. So you do your set of 10, say we're doing bench press, so we do our set of 10, takes 30 seconds. You're gonna take about 30 seconds to a minute recover. And again, if you're at the lower end of this pyramid base building, if you don't pass the fitness test, then the maximum I would prescribe for this person is 18 sets in any single workout. Which isn't really that much if you think you're going to get maybe 3 sets of bench press, 3 sets of squats, 3 sets of, say, deadlifts, 3 sets of something else, 1, 2, 3 is 9, 10, 11, 12, we got maybe 6 exercises, which again is what people prescribe. But if you are at the lower end, so let's redo this for someone who's at the lower end and getting rubbish sleep. So I've redone the pyramid. Again, this is the person that gets 5.5 hours, and this was a client I had this week, 5.5 hours sleep, which is 330 minutes of sleep, which is pants, by the way. That translates to about 66 minutes of low intensity. If you think of sleep as charging your battery, that's how much use you're gonna get out of today. It's 66 minutes, which if this person's aerobic engine is low, it translates to about 6.6K steps. And when we looked at this person's phone, that's exactly the amount of steps they got on average. So we looked at over a month, their average sleep was 5.5 hours or 5.5, and their average steps was 6.6. It works perfectly. Have a look for yourself and do this for yourself and see where you fit in. And maybe it's a way of checking your aerobic engine to see if you're higher or lower. I suspect if this person does more steps, they will get more tired, therefore their sleeping will go up, and then you're steamrolling until you get to a point where it's just too many steps per day, and you're not recovering. So this isn't really recovery, this is like element to push past. And then this person can do about 30 minutes of high intensity work. So that would be, you could do intervals on the bike where that would be, and depending again how big this base is, depends how quickly they recover. So if you did a minute hard, but it took you 3 minutes to get your heart rate back down to base, that would be 3 minutes worth of work. It would be 4 minutes. 1 minute of the cycling and 3 minutes to recover, so that'd be 4 minutes. So we would chunk that down into maybe just 3 intervals of a minute. If this person recovers really well, say they recover within a minute, they could do maybe half of this, so about 6 intervals with a minute rest. So that would be 12 minutes of total. It would be 6 minutes of total work, but it'd be 12 minutes of actual time. And then they can go off and do their walkie walks and improve their fitness. But really, to improve their fitness, they want to improve their sleep. The more sleep you get, the more energy you have for the next day. The more energy you have for the next day, the more chance you have at burning calories. 6.6K steps, so roughly per 2,000 steps, you burn about 100 calories roughly, depending on how large and big you are. You might burn a little bit more, a little bit less than that, but that isn't very many calories. So it's about 300 calories there. If we add another 3,000 steps onto that, that would another 2,000 steps onto that. Instead of 300, that will be 400. That's meaningful over a week, certainly meaningful over a month. Then this intensity can go up, and then everything can go up. So a quick conclusion on this client. This client reports feeling tired and being lazy. I think laziness, in the most part, is BS. What it is not enough recovery time sleeping, not enough nutrition going into the body, not enough healthy nutrition to get the system and the energy flowing. And then this just leads into a struggle of not sleeping enough, not doing enough, not sleeping enough, not doing enough. And what you want to do is either push the doing up, so then the sleeping increases just because you're more tired and your body just demands more sleep. And we really need to get rid of the mobile phone and put that away so we get a decent amount of sleep. And this is what the pyramid, and this is a way of working how much you should do. I'll cover someone who's got a slightly higher aerobic system in the next clip. Okay, there's someone who's got slightly better aerobic engine. They've built up the aerobic engine in zone 2 work. They get 8 hours sleep, which is 480 minutes. Their average resting heart rate when they're sleeping is 45. That's more genetic than anything important. Lower resting heart rate is generally a healthy sign. So this person can get 96 minutes of low intensity exercise, which will translate about 9.6. And if we think that 8 and 8.5 hours is the kind of general recommended sleeping, and 10K steps, it's quite weird how that correlates quite closely. This person's zone 2 is about 130 beats, and I put that in the middle there. So their steps, their maybe average beats are 90 to 100 beats. So that steps isn't as fatiguing as true zone 2 work. That would be zone 1 work, and they can do a little bit more. So what they need to do is keep that aerobic engine going, so they can get about 96 minutes per day at the maximum. I recommend anything for this person 30 to 45 to an hour, and not generally per day, more 4 times per week. Have a life as well as training. But they can also do steady state cardio. I don't recommend steady state cardio all the time, but it's really good to practice time trials, especially if you are endurance athlete. You need to practice the pace that you're actually going to be doing your race or your event at about 48 minutes, which is just half of this 96, would be my kind of maximum that I would go to. So something like a 20-minute time trial type thing might be really beneficial, and you should be able to recover the next day quite well for that. And 48 would be the limit of that. And because this person can do 19 minutes of high intensity work, that roughly works out about a 10 to 20 minute Metcon if this person chose to do that. Obviously, if they do a longer Metcon, it takes maybe more days to recover, but they can handle a 10 to 20 minute Metcon. A Metcon would be like a continuous training sort of high intensity thing, moving from one movement to another, like circuit training or CrossFit. And this person can also do 15 to 20 reps in a set, and they can also do, like, say, a 10-minute Metcon and like 10 sets, or even say they do 4 sets of squats and 4 sets of overhead press as their strength part. That would be 8 sets. Then they've got some energy to spend on a Metcon if improving their kind of VO2 max and the cardiovascular system and improving on Metcons is their sort of thing. But this kind of details how much work you should be doing based on your sleep and how well you're going to be able to recover from that. So hopefully that was clear. And again, if you have any questions in the bottom of this thing, there is a Q&A. And I'll see you guys in the next one.